Hello, my name is Fatima Nieto. In this opportunity, I will explain the advantages of using CLT. Well, to begin, we have to know what CLT and what its history has been. What is CLT? Communicate language teaching or the Communicate approach is an approach to language teaching that emphasizes interaction as both the mean and the ultimate goal of study. CLT is based on the idea that learning language successfully comes without having to communicate real meaning. When learners are involved in real communication, their natural strategies for language acquisition will be used, and this will allow them to learn to use the language. For about 50 years, CLT has been transforming, and they had three phases. And the number one is traditional approach. This phase of traditional approach gave priority of grammatical competence based on language proficiency. This grammar teaching approach was deductive as students were introduced to grammar rules and then given the opportunity to practice using them. The second phase is classic communicative language teaching. This focus on a skill-based curriculum is focused on the four skills of reading, listening, and speaking, and divide each skill into its component micro skill. These are recognize keywords in conversation, recognize the topic of conversation, recognize the attitude of a speaker toward a topic, recognize the temporal reference of a sentence, follow a speed at different speed, identify key information in a passage. This phase is current communicative language teaching. This phase is still present. The communicative approach has been widely implemented. Communicative language teaching has continued to evolve as understanding of the processes of second language learning has developed. Current communicative language teaching theory and practice tools draw on the number of different educational paradigms and traditions. Now I explain the advantages of CLT. These are the number one communicative approach is much more pupil oriented because it is based on pupil needs and interests. This approach is very important because it is added to the need of the student and it is challenged that the teacher as a guide to implement so that the student show interest in what the teacher teaches. The number two communicative approach is to personalize and locate language and add to interest pupil. Meaningful language is always more easily retained by learners. In this approach, the student has to acquire knowledge and skill told how the teacher can think. Then is the best way. On that it depends that the student has a meaningful learning. The number three is to use authentic resource, and that is more interesting and motivating for children. This resource could be platform that help the student to have greater knowledge and that at the same time motivation them to learn either in different ways. Also for copies of complementary resource, book, card, any resource that help a student to acquire new knowledge. And the number four, children acquire grammar rule as the necessary to speak so is more proficient and efficient. And this advantages is very important because within the classroom, a student can practice a second language and see it as a necessary and can acquire more knowledge. And other advantages that a student could have those motivation are interaction between the learner and user of the language, collaborative creation of meaning, creating meaningful and purposeful interaction through language, negotiation of meaning as the learning of his or her the ella interlocutor arrive at understanding. Learning thoughts, attending to the feedback learners have when they use the language, paying attention to the language one hear the input and try to incorporate new form into one developing communicative competence and trying out and experimenting with different ways of saying things. And this has been my participation. My colleague Evelyn will continue to explain the second topic to you.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Rojas, and I'm going to continue with the presentation with the video. So I'm going to explain about blended learning, that is the class in week 5. So continuing with the techniques, I would like to explain a little bit more about this one that actually is widely used due to its practicality. So, what is blended learning? Blended learning is a method of teaching that integrates technology and digital media with traditional instructional classroom with activities, giving students more flexibility to customize their learning experiences. So, in blended learning, we can find different advantages that we can use at the moment of a class in the context that we prefer our students learn, if we want in a face-to-face class or in a virtual class. So we can consider different things like, for example, the year level of our students. First of all, we can say that blended learning support learner teaching process and support also the traditional learning process. The first one refers to the online individual learning and offline individual learning. The use of a technological tool and include the online group interaction. In the other hand, the traditional refers to a face-to-face classroom teaching with formal interaction with the teachers and other students, and the other one refers to the non-formal interaction with classmates. A blended learning model is undoubtedly a great way to augment the learner's experience, but its advantages go beyond that. Using blended learning, we obtain some benefits that are the next. Exists more than one option to learn. Also, teachers can use two modes for teaching their students, the face-to-face class and the virtual class. We get face-to-face interaction and also interact in a virtual space. Is what I said before. We get a full experience using technological tools, and we develop different skills with the traditional learning and the virtual learning, and increase our personality through the interaction. The personality of our students increase through the interaction. And some characteristics that I would like to emphasize in blended learning are the next. The human touch, that is very important in this process of learning. Blended learning also makes teaching learning process child-centered and students construct knowledge rather than just consuming it. And finally, I would like to say that to use that technique that is blended learning in our class is necessary some things that in this case are well-trained teachers, teachers with scientific attitude, teachers with wider outlook and positive approach towards change, and is necessary to be related with the prerequisites. So blended learning is a really nice process of learning and we can put in practice in our class. So this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching.